everyone, welcome back. I'm Zai, and today I'm bringing you part 1 of my manga collection video, end of year 2020. So, I decided to film a manga collection video for you. I have not done one of these in the past. So, this first part will encompass this shelf that you see back here in most of my videos, well, most of it anyway. I decided to do it a little bit differently just because filming the bookshelves is not an easy feat for me, so I did it a little differently. So when you see the video, you'll still see all of the manga, it'll just be a little bit different. It won't be on the shelf. But that being said, there are a few other things that I want to get to before I start showing you my collection. One of the things that I share with you as I show you the titles I own is if I've read the series or not. Now, I have a lot of unread volumes in my collection. It doesn't bother me. I enjoy having a backlog of things that I have not read yet. I come to collecting manga not for any type of monetary value or anything like that. For me, collecting manga is more of an investment in future entertainment. For me to collect things that I think that I'm going to enjoy when I have the money to do so. So, say for example, there may come a time in the future where I'm not able to purchase manga to read. That's when I fall back on, I have all of this entertainment at my fingertips for me to enjoy, and I'm not going to have the need to spend when I can't. I don't know if that makes any sense to you. But it's an investment in future entertainment. That's always how I've looked at collecting manga. That's always how I've looked at collecting books. I like to have a large backlog. So that's where we are with that. The second thing that I need to mention is that I am a mood reader. I have to be in the mood to read certain titles, specific titles. There are a lot of things that affect my want to read certain titles. There's a lot of hype around it, I'm not going to want to read it. If people are reading it at the same time as me, I may not want to read it. If the content of the story is very emotional, very sad, I have to be in the right frame of mind to read it. So a lot of things like that affect when I decide to pick up certain titles to read in my collection. And so that also plays a fact into why I have so many unread titles. Prior to 2020, I did borrow a lot of manga from my library system, which also affects the reason that I have so many unread titles in my collection. In 2020, with the way everything was, I wasn't able to borrow as much as I would have from my library, so that made me read stuff from my collection, which is what it's there for. That's what I wanted out of my collection all along. So again, having a ton of unread titles in my collection is a benefit for me because that's what I've wanted my collection to be. Something that I could fall back on for future enjoyment if I am unable to get materials from other sources. So, one last thing that I think you need to know before we head into my collection is the fact that I do purchase a lot of secondhand manga, whether it be from library book sales, used bookstores, etc. And I don't take the stickers off of the volumes. So if it's an extra library copy or if there's a sale sticker on it, I don't fiddle with that at all. So you will see a lot of that on my volumes. It doesn't bother me. It's like a tattoo of my book's previous life. So if at any time it does bother me to have that on there, I will take it off. But at this point in time, I'm not bothered by it at all, and so you'll see a lot of those too. I think that's all I have to say on that. So I'm going to turn the camera around and you will get to see the first part of my manga collection. You will notice a difference in quality because the camera that I had used previously to film all of my videos actually started smoking and died before I took the footage of my collection. Plus, the previous video that I had taken of it was over 3 hours long, so I nixed that one. Then my camera decided to smoke and die. So I used an old camera to film this first part. This introduction is on my brand new camera. I'm not sure how it's going to look or anything like that. This is the very first video I'm filming on it. But let's get to the manga, because that's what you're here for.
So first up, I have Shugochara, volumes 1 through 12 by Peach Pit. You can see that I have publications from Kodansha and Del Rey. I have read a couple volumes from this series, but I have not yet read through the entire series. I have watched the first season of the anime as well as some of the second. Following that up with Shugochara-chan, this one is created by Peach Pit, manga by Naphthaline Mizushima et al. I have not read any of this either. I do intend on reading it after I complete Shugochara. I have volumes 1 through 4 of The Bride and the Exorcist Night by Keiko Ishihara. This one is published by 7 Seas. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 5 of Imadoki by Yu Watase, published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 14 of Devil's Line by Ryo Hanada. This one's published by Vertical. I have not yet read this series, but I have watched the very first episode of the anime. I have volumes 1 and 2 of Butterfly's Flowers by Yuki Yoshihara. This one is published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 5 of Yurara by Chika Shiomi. This one's published by Viz. I have read volumes 1, 2, and 3, but have not yet read volumes 4 and 5. I have volumes 1 through 6 of Spirit Circle. This one is published by 7 Seas and is by Satoshi Mizukami. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 5 of Phantom Dream by Natsuki Takaya. This one is published by Tokyo Pop. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 4 of Millennium Snow by Bisco Hattori. This one's published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 4 of the omnibus editions of the Kurosagi Corpse Delivery Service. This one is by Eiji Otsuka and Hosue Yamazaki, published by Dark Horse. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 6 of Vampire Doll by Erika Kari. This one is published by Tokyo Pop. I have read volumes 1 through 5, but have not yet read volume 6. I have volumes 1 and 2 of Versailles of the Dead by Kumiko Suekane. This one is published by 7 Seas. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 of The Girl from the Other Side, Shularun. This one's published by 7 Seas. Story and art by Nagabe. I have not yet read this series. I do need to pick up volume 3, which I will be doing shortly. Now into some light novels. I have The Ancient Magus' Bride, The Golden Yarn, and The Silver Yarn. These were published by 7 Seas. Editorial supervisor was Kore Yamazaki. I have not yet read these. I have Near Automata Yoha Boys, written by Jun Ishima, original story by Yoko Taro. This one is published by Square Enix Books. Then I also have Near Automata short story Long, written by Jun Ishima and Yoko Taro, original story by Yoko Taro. This one was published by Viz. I have not yet read these. I have Volume 1 from the Empire, Trinity Blood, Rage Against the Moons. This one is by Sunao Yoshida and published by Tokyo Pop. I have not yet read this one. I have Novel 1 of Classroom of the Elite, story by Shogo Kinugasa and art by Tomo Seishun Saku. I have not yet read this, and this one was published by Seven Seas. I have novels 1 and 2 of Restaurant to Another World. These were written by Junpei Inuzuka and illustrated by Katsumi Enami. These were both published by Seven Seas, and I have not yet read these. I have these two bind-ups of the Boogie Pop novels, story by Kyohei Kadano, illustrated by Koji Ogata. These were both published by Seven Seas, and I have not yet read these. I have the light novel version of I Want to Eat Your Pancreas by Yoru Sumino. This one was published by Seven Seas, and I have not yet read this. I have the first book in the Occultic 9 light novel series, story by Shikura Chiyomaru and art by Paco. This one's published by Seven Seas, and I have not yet read this. I have the first book in the Strike the Blood, the Right Arm of the Saint light novel series by Gakuto Mikumo, illustration by Manyako. This one was published by Yen On, and I have not yet read this one. I have the light novel version of Your Name by Makoto Shinkai. I have not yet read this one. This one is published by Yen On. I have volumes 1 through 4 of Night of the Ice by Yayoi Ogawa. This one's published by Kodansha. I have not yet read this one. I have volumes 1 and 2 of the collector's edition of Maison Ikoku by Rumiko Takahashi. These were published by Viz. I have not yet read these, but I have seen a little bit of the anime. I have volume 1 of the collector's edition of Mermaid Saga, story and art by Rumiko Takahashi. This one was again published by Viz, and I have seen most of the anime. I have volumes 1 through 4 of 1 Week Friends by Macha Hazuki. This one was published by Yen Press, and I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 3 of Perfect World by Rie Aruga. This one was published by Kodansha. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 5 of Paradise Kiss by Ayazawa. This one, or my version, was published by Tokyo Pop. I have not yet read this series, but I have watched the live-action Japanese movie adaptation and enjoyed that, though I understand that the ending is different. I have volumes 1 through 3 of Fairy Cube by Kaori Yuki. This one was published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 and 2 of Otome Mania. This one is by Tsukigase Yurino. I have read both of these volumes, and this was published by Seven Seas. I have volumes 1 through 3 of Love in Focus by Yoko Nogiri. This one was published by Kodansha. I have read volume 1, but have not yet read volumes 2 or 3. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Forget Me Not by Mag-Su and Nao Emoto. This one was published by Kodansha. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 6 and 14 of The Demon Prince of Momochi House by Aya Shoto. This one was published by Viz. I have such a large gap in my collection because I found volume 14 for a very good price, so I couldn't let it go and decided to pick that one up, hence the gap. But I have read volumes 1 and 2, but I have not yet read the rest of it. I have volumes 1 through 9 of Shortcake Cake by Sue Morishita. This one was published by Viz, and I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 10 of Dreamin' Sun. This one was published by Seven Seas and is by Ichigo Takano. I have read the first volume but have not yet read the rest of it. I have volumes 1 through 8 of Honey So Sweet by Amu Meguro. This one was published by Viz. I have read volumes 1 through 6 but have not yet read volumes 7 or 8. I have volumes 1 through 15 of LDK Living Dining Kitchen by Ayu Watanabe. This one was published by Kodansha. I have read volumes 1 through 14, but still need to read volume 15. I have volumes 1 through 7 of Behind the Scenes by Bisco Hattori. This one was published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Kiss Him Not Me by Junko. This one was published by Kodansha. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 7 of Full Moon by Arina Tanemura. This one was published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 4 and 5 of The Quintessential Quintuplets by Negi Haruba. This one was published by Kodansha. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 digitally. So I just have these two physically for right now. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 3 of Library Wars, Love and War, story and art by Kiiro Yumi, original concept by Hiro Arikawa. This one was published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Prince Freya by Keiko Ishihara. This one is published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have the bind-up of Wadanohara and the Great Blue Sea. This one was published by Seven Seas. Story and art by Kate Shujun. And I have read this one. I read it with my manga club and really enjoyed it. I have volumes 1, 2, 3, and 5 of Accomplishments of the Duke's Daughter. This one was published by Seven Seas. Story by Rhea, art by Suki Umemiya, character design by Haruki Futaba. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 13 of Waiting for Spring by Anashin. This one is published by Kodansha, and I have read the first volume. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Wonderland, story and art by Yugo Ishikawa. This one was published by Seven Seas. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Ghost Diary. This one was published by Seven Seas. Story and art by Seiju Natsumegu. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 and 2 of Magia the Ninth, story and art by Ichiya Sazanami. This one is published by Seven Seas, and I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 and 2 of Mythical Beast Investigator, story by Keiichi Ayasato, art by Koichiro Hoshino, character design by Jack. This one is published by Seven Seas. I have not yet read this series. I have Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest, volumes 1 through 6. This one was published by Kodansha. This one's story and layouts by Hiro Mashima, art by Atsuo Ueda. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 and 2 of Snow White with the Red Hair by Sorata Akizuki. This one is published by Viz, and I have read both of these volumes, but don't intend on collecting any more of them at this time. I have volumes 1 and 2 of Crimson Hero by Mitsuba Takanashi. This one was published by Viz, and I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of A Witch's Printing Office, story by Mochinchi, art by Yasuhiro Miyama. This one is published by Yen Press, and I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 and 3 of Reborn as a Polar Bear, The Legend of How I Became a Forest Guardian, art by Hoki Kusano, original story by Chihiro Mishima, character design by Kururi. This one is published by Yen Press, and I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 and 2 of Shuriken and Pleat, story and art by Matsuri Hino. These were published by Viz, and I have read both of these volumes. I have volumes 1 through 4 of Juni Taisen Zodiac War, manga by Akira Akatsuki, based on the novel by Nishi Oishin, character design by Hikaru Nakamura. This one is published by Viz, and I have not yet read the manga. I am in the middle of the light novel, which you will see a little later. And I have watched the first episode of the anime. I have volumes 1 through 4 of Takeru Opera Susano Sword of the Devil, story by Kazuki Nakashima, art by Kara Kemuri. This one was published by Tokyo Pop. I have read 1 or 2 of these volumes. I had borrowed them from my library at the time, but I have not yet read the rest of it. I have volumes 1 through 4 of The Promised Neverland. This one is published by Viz, story by Kayu Shirai, and art by Posuka Demizu. I read the first volume, but have not yet read the rest of it. I have volumes 1 through 15 of Devils and Realists. This one was published by Seven Seas. Art by Utako Yukihiro and story by Madoka Takadono. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 12 of The Ancient Magus' Bride. This one was published by Seven Seas, story and art by Kore Yamazaki. I have not yet read any of these manga volumes, however, I have watched the very first episode of the anime. I have volumes 1 through 11 of Yamada-kun and the Seven Witches by Miki Yoshikawa. This one was published by Kodansha. I have not yet read any of this series. I have volumes 1 through 4 and 10 of Requiem of the Rose King by Aya Kano. This one was published by Viz. Again, volume 10 was a Manga Monday deal. This I have not yet read. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Grand Guignol Orchestra by Kaori Yuki. This one was published by Viz. I have actually read this entire series. I borrowed the last 2 volumes from my library. I have volumes 1 through 4 of The Kane Saga by Kaori Yuki, published by Viz. Volume 4 is actually 2 parts. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 8 of Godchild by Kaori Yuki, also published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 3 of Dragon Half, published by Seven Seas, story and art by Ryusuke Mita. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 6 of Phantom Tales of the Night by Matsuri. This one is published by Yen Press. I have read volume 1, but have not yet read the rest of the volumes. I have volumes 1 through 6 of Cells at Work, Code Black. This one was published by Kodansha. Story by Shigemitsu Harada, art by Issei Hatsuyoshiya, and created by Akane Shimizu. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Fairy Tail Battle Royale. This one is published by Seven Seas. Story and art by Soraho Ina. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 4 of Harukana Receive, published by Seven Seas. Story and art by Nyoi Jizai. I have read volume 1, but have not yet read the rest of the volumes. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Dive. This one is published by Yen Press. Original story by Eto Mori, art by Ruzuru Akashiba. Character design by Suzuhito Yasuda in collaboration with Animation Dive Committee. I have not yet read these volumes, however, I have watched the anime and really enjoyed it. I have volumes 1 and 2 of Blank Slate by Aya Kano. This one was published by Viz, and I have not yet read this series. I have volume 1 of 21st Century Boys by Naoki Urasawa. This was published by Viz and is kind of an odd volume in my collection as I had gotten it for free. So I'm just holding on to it for right now because I do want to get into 20th Century Boys. And I think it's something that I'm really going to enjoy, but I have not yet gotten into that one. I have volume 1 of We Swore to Meet in the Next Life, and That's When Things Got Weird. Story and art by Hato Hachiya. This one was published by Seven Seas. I have not yet read this volume. I have volumes 1 through 4 of Our Dreams at Dusk, published by Seven Seas. Story and art by Yuki Kamatani. I have not yet read this series. I have Danganronpa, the animation. This one was published by Dark Horse, volumes 1 through 4. Created by Spike Chunsoft, manga by Takashi Tsukimi. I have read this series and have done a series thoughts video on it, as well as comparing it to the anime and the video game. I have volumes 1 and 3 of Danganronpa 2 Ultimate Luck and Hope and Despair, created by Spike Chunsoft, manga by Kyosuke Suga. I have not yet read these volumes. I have volumes 1 and 2 of Slumbering Beauty, story and art by Yumi Unita. These were published by Seven Seas. I have read both of these volumes. I have volumes 1 through 5 of If It's For My Daughter, I'd Even Defeat a Demon Lord, published by Seven Seas. Art by Hota, story by Chiroru, character design by Kei Truffle. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 4 of Haven't You Heard I'm Sakamoto, published by Seven Seas. Art and story by Nami Sano. I have not yet read this series. I have My Pathetic Vampire Life, volumes 1 and 2, story and art by Ishikawa Rose. This one was published by Seven Seas, and I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 and 3 of Absolute Duo. This one says, Shinichiro Narie presents original story by Takumi Hiira Giboshi, character design by Yo Asaba. I have not yet read these volumes. I have volumes 1 through 3 of Idle Dreams by Arina Tanemura. This one is published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I also have volumes 1 and 2 of Sakura Hime, The Legend of Princess Sakura by Arina Tanemura. This one was also published by Viz, and I also have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 4 of A Tropical Fish Yearns for Snow by Makoto Hagino. This one was published by Viz. I have read volume 1, but have not yet read the rest of the volumes. I have volumes 1 through 9 of Takane and Hana by Yuki Shiwasu. This one was published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 11 of The Gentleman's Alliance Cross by Arina Tanemura, published by Viz. I have read this series. It is probably the series that I have read the most in my collection. I have volumes 3, 4, and 5 of Captive Hearts by Matsuri Hino. I have not yet read this series. It's published by Viz. I have volumes 1 and 2 of Yuri Is My Job, published by Kodansha. This one is by Mimon, and I have not yet read these volumes. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Wake Up Sleeping Beauty, published by Kodansha. This one is by Megumi Morino. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 4 of The Delinquent Housewife by Nemu Yoko. This one was published by Vertical. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of O Maidens in Your Savage Season, published by Kodansha. This one is by Mari Okada, art by Nao Emoto. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of New Game by Shoyaro Tokuno, published by Seven Seas. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 7 of Made in Abyss by Akihito Tsukushi. This one was published by Seven Seas. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 8 of Kaguya-sama Love is Ward by Aka Akasaka. This one is published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 through 5 of Princess Princess and Princess Princess Plus by Mikio Tsuda. This one was published by DMP. I have not yet read this series, but I have watched a little bit of the Japanese drama adaptation. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of My Dress Up Darling by Shinichi Fukuda. This one is published by Square Enix Manga. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1 and 2 of My Androgynous Boyfriend story and art by Tameko. This one is published by Seven Seas, and I have not yet read these volumes. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of BL Metamorphosis story and art by Kaori Surutani. This one was published by Seven Seas. I have not yet read these volumes. I have volumes 1 through 4 of The Way of the House Husband by Kosuke Ono. This one was published by Viz. I have read the first volume, but I have not yet read the rest of it. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Rent a Girlfriend by Reiji Miyajima. This one is published by Kodansha. I have not yet read these volumes. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Giant Spider and Me, a post-apocalyptic tale published by Seven Seas. This one is story and art by Kikori Morino. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Special A by Maki Minami. This one was published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. I have volumes 1, 2, and 3 of Magus of the Library by Mitsu Izumi. This one was published by Kodansha. I have not yet read this series. I have Blue Flag volumes 1 through 5 story and art by Kaito. This one is published by Viz. I have not yet read this series. And that will do it for the first part of my manga collection video. So stay tuned for part 2 coming sometime soon. Let me know if you have read any of these series and what you thought of them, or if there is a series in here that you think I should pick up right away. I hope to see you back in part 2, and that will do it for me today. I hope you are all doing great. I hope you are all safe and healthy. And until next time, take care and smile always. Bye.